Strings had been tied to each triplet's wrist, so the balloons would not be lost to the troposphere. The triplets were 6 years old this very Easter day. Their mom always dressed them alike, bought them identical toys, and took them places to show them off. Her dream was for them to be child models, or at least cheerleaders. Seated near them, she encouraged the trio to wave at people on the shore. As the triplets waved, the balloons would float up and down, drawing all eyes toward the barge. It seems possible that the first bee may actually have stung the mother, but there was general agreement that the triplets waving their arms to ward off the bees caused the balloons to bounce and strike other bees, enraging them even more. The girl's mother swung at the bees with her purse again and again, screaming as they began to sting her through her thin spring dress. Terror-struck, the triplets backed away in unison. When they reached out for a rail, another stream of bees seemed to skim in over the water, striking each of the 6 pink arms. In seconds, the insects had penetrated the girls' puff-sleeved outfits. Their screams drew the attention of diners at the canal-side restaurants. One woman on the barge rolled up a newspaper and, futilely trying to help the children, began to smack at the insects. The mother grabbed one of her brood and began to look for a place to run to. The string attached to her daughter's wrist became tangled with the string tied to her sister, so as the mother ran, the second triplet, screaming even louder, was dragged down. "Mommy, help me!" she cried. But it was her sister, back black with bees, who picked her up. The mother was hysterical. The bees were winning, surrounding her children in a cloud of flying agony so dense it was difficult to see past it. Just feet away on the shore, scores of people were also being stung. Even those who managed to smash a bee immediately found their hands covered with a dozen more. When they attempted to wipe the bees off by rubbing their hands against their arms and legs, those limbs were almost instantly covered. The best refuge now seemed the water in the canal. So panicked that their common sense had left them, fully dressed people, forgetting they couldn't breathe underwater, began jumping in. As they ran, other people yelled to the girls, "Jump! Jump in the water!" But none of the triplets could hear them. By this point, they had been stung on the head so many times that their eyes were swollen shut. 2 of them had dead bees jammed in their ears, forced in deep by the children's hysterical fingers trying to scrape the scourge from their faces. One of the triplets fell kicking to the deck, then another. Suddenly, one of the barge's passengers, a big Texan, came to the rescue. He waded into the cloud of bees as if they weren't there, snapped the twine on each girl's wrist, then pitched them neatly, one by one, over the railing into the canal. He hurled the mother in last, then made a shallow dive himself. 2 of the triplets had already begun to go into shock when the Texan picked them up. As their extremities began to swell, they started losing consciousness. When they hit the water, the cold revived them, but not enough to save them. They were underwater, and they had never learned to swim. Their mother hit the canal at a steeper angle than the cowboy, and stood up promptly in the chest-high water. The bees still massed in her hair, but she ignored them. Nothing mattered now that her children were drowning. Frantic, she looked around, wading ineffectually toward one of the punctured balloons, but before she got to the spot, her face was covered with bees. Even though she submerged and tore them off with her hands, their tiny barbed stingers would remain buried in her flesh, sending dose after dose of lethal toxin into her system. The cowboy, who called himself Cal, saw one of the girls break water and struggled toward her. Just as he reached her, she went under, but he managed to lift her to the surface. A clerk from a nearby sporting goods store, in order to help, hurled a rubber raft into the canal and tried to maneuver it toward Cal. Just as Cal grabbed for it, the bees hit him, the girl, and the clerk, who stood up, waving his arms as the bees struck, falling backwards into the water. The raft kicked out from under the falling clerk and turned over. At last, Cal had a chance. He came up underneath the raft, gasping, with the little girl in tow. Almost immediately, the clerk's head reappeared, and with trepidation, they both examined the child. Her face looked as if it had been inflated with a basketball pump. The orange, yellow, and black bodies of hundreds of dead and dying bees clung to her hair, her ears, her nose, inserting their abdomens into her nostrils, stinging upward, relentlessly, mercilessly. The child was barely breathing, except for the furious whine of the bees. Her desperate gasps were the only thing the men could hear. As the 2 of them made their way under the cover of the raft, down the canal, and away from the swarms, Cal tried to give the girl mouth-to-mouth